Antarctica. We all know it as a frozen continent of mystery and intrigue. Is it just ice and science, or are there hidden truths beneath the surface? From blurry satellite images sparking claims of alien outposts to a mysterious balloon over a research station, and even tales of a hidden cave and flying silver objects from a US Navy flight engineer, the rumors are wild. Today we are diving into the strange and unexplained, exploring what makes Antarctica the world's coldest, most enigmatic mystery box. Let's uncover what's really going on down there. Antarctica's secret alien cover-up. Antarctica is the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on Earth. It is so hostile it has no permanent residents, but that doesn't mean that nobody wants it. It is actually very strategically important, and there was almost a war over who would own rights to the land in the 1940s and 50s after World War II. Remember Operation High Jump, when the US sent thousands of men, ships, and aircraft to Antarctica? Since World War II, rumors abound of a secret German base, hidden pyramids, and even lost civilizations and alien technology. Antarctica is the world's coldest mystery box that no one seems able to open. Now it's home to endless ice and about 5,000 very brave scientists, but sadly not one half-decent coffee shop. But since this place is so icy and unexplored, people can't help but wonder, what's really going on down there? One of the greatest tools for armchair explorers like all of us, who can't really get to Antarctica, is Google Earth. Internet sleuths have identified an area of high potential activity around Ross Island and Beaufort Island, areas known for their volcanic origins and rugged terrain. Grainy, pixelated satellite images of the region have revealed what could be alien outposts. The issue is that the images are really hard to see. For example, check out this picture from Google Earth showing potential alien bases in Antarctica. Is it enough to convince you? Because honestly, I can't tell what's going on. It's too blurry. The so-called evidence looks suspiciously like ice flows, rocky peaks, and shadows. Many supposed alien artifacts found in Antarctica have been explained as natural phenomena like unusual rock formations or meteorites. Think of it this way. If you squint hard enough at a satellite image, almost anything can start to look like a flying saucer stuck in the ice. There is no official reliable agency that keeps a record of UFO sightings specifically for Antarctica, but visitors have reported many sightings of strange lights and unusual movements in the sky. Our brains are wired to find patterns, especially ones resembling familiar shapes like faces or objects. So when people spot alien bases in a blurry photo, it might just be a shadow cast by terrain, or an oddly shaped mountain, or an ice formation. Nature can play tricks on you. But something strange has been caught on camera that you might be interested in. Check out this image here. It's a frame from a video posted on YouTube taken of the Antarctic Research Hub Nouméa Station 3. Notice the balloon floating over the base. People asked what it was, but no one confirmed that it was just a weather balloon, and so people like UFO expert Russell Tetrault claimed it was extraterrestrial. And he said that the people need to wake up to the fact that we are getting visits from another race. This picture was taken more than a decade ago, and there is still no definitive explanation. Some say it's a UFO returning to its icy base, and others say it's just a cloud. But if it's a cloud, that is one solid cloud. There are even rumors that Nouméa Station 3 is in league with the government, collaborating with the US on top-secret tests involving alien technology and advanced weapons systems. What better place to hide than Antarctica? McMurdo Station is the largest research facility on the continent. It was established by the US government in 1956 and can hold up to 1,200 people. But something strange happened in more recent years. We don't have to go back to the 50s. Reporter Linda Moulton Howe spoke with a retired US Navy flight engineer who wanted to remain anonymous, so she called him Brian. He served with the Antarctic Development Squadron at McMurdo for 14 years. He tells Linda about some very strange experiences during his time in Antarctica. From 1983 to 1997, he was flying in numerous missions, including rescue operations. One day, while flying over the Trans-Antarctic Mountains, the crew saw a bunch of silver, shiny round things moving in groups maps from peak to peak before zooming off. This happened several times. Then he said that during a medical emergency mission, they flew through a no-fly zone and saw a huge slanted cave entrance in the ice, estimated to be 200 feet in diameter. Their instruments malfunctioned and they experienced magnetic anomalies, leading them to believe the hole was the cause. Brian says that he and the crew were told never to speak of the incident again or fly over the hole. The secret war in Antarctica. There is indeed a conspiracy being covered up in Antarctica, but it's not necessarily connected to aliens. Britain's secret Antarctic war involves polar men, Nazis, and genetically engineered beings. We're about to go full X-Files. I'm kind of surprised that nobody has made a movie based on the tale you're about to hear. The story begins near the end of World War II. According to claims brought to light by James Roberts and Nexus magazine, the British government allegedly launched a top-secret mission to infiltrate a supposed Nazi base in Antarctica. The base was in Queen Maud Land, or as the Nazis renamed it, Neuschwabenland, which, let's be honest, sounds like a villain's lair straight out of James Bond. This took place in October of 1945. A British soldier, fresh from duty in Yugoslavia, was the one sent on this covert mission. First, he was sent to the Falkland Islands for training in winter warfare, under the guidance of a Norwegian resistance fighter. No one told him why, only that his survival was not guaranteed, and silence was mandatory. The Nazis had built secret bases in Antarctica during the war, and these weren't your average bunkers, though. Reports spoke about advanced technology, U-boat docks, and even genetic experiments. The British allegedly believed that the Nazis had begun building a sort of pseudo-scientific city in which they were trying to create genetically modified polar men, not abominable snowmen. They were supposedly super soldiers, just like Captain America, only the Nazi kind, designed to thrive in sub-zero conditions and fight like the Hulk. According to our protagonist's account, the first British unit sent to investigate the Nazis' abandoned strongholds stumbled upon tunnels leading to a vast, artificially lit cavern. Inside, the British soldiers found lakes, Nazi-built hangars, and what can only be described as the beginnings of an underground city. Only 2 men survived the mission to the underground place. Their final radio transmission ended with the ominous words, "The polar men have found us." A second British unit was sent in the footsteps of the first. They were more heavily armed and carried enough explosives to wage a small war. The story goes that they parachuted into Antarctica to finish the job. Their mission was to locate the tunnels, destroy the Nazi base, and, if possible, figure out what the heck was going on with these polar men. And that was exactly what they did. The tunnels were collapsed with explosives, and all trace of whatever the Nazis were doing is now a mile under the ice. The mission was quickly buried under layers of government secrecy. The official story became that the tunnels were naturally formed by glacial erosion, and the polar men were nothing more than isolated Nazi soldiers who had gone crazy. Some theorists believe the Nazis weren't just playing mad scientists in Antarctica, but were also in cahoots with extraterrestrials. But consider this. The Nazis were obsessed with the occult and advanced technologies. The Nazis were more bananas for aliens than that guy on the History Channel with the crazy hair. Considering the Nazis' engineering leaps during the war, could they have had outside help? Did the British destroy bases used to genetically engineer humanoid beings with alien DNA? Hard to say, but the truth is out there. And now for a quick break because it's shout out time. I want to give a big thank you to For the Love of Puzzles. I love puzzles. And LM Forever in Michigan for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for watching and spending time with us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. An aircraft frozen solid. You've heard of Pegasus, the legendary flying horse from Greek mythology, but have you heard of the Pegasus? The aircraft's buried in Antarctica for over 50 years. Let me tell you the story of how this plane got to its frozen grave. So this is the tale of braving the bone-chilling cold of Antarctica. October 8th, 1970, the Pegasus took off from Christchurch Airport, New Zealand on what should have been a straightforward 10.5-hour hop to McMurdo Station, Antarctica. But Mother Nature had other plans, as she so often does. The flight literally went south. Pegasus, a Lockheed C-121 Constellation, crash-landed in the ice and is still there to this very day. Can you imagine being on that plane? A 10-hour flight suddenly turning into a life-or-death situation? There were 12 crew members and 68 passengers. They inadvertently flew into the worst whiteout any of them had ever seen. They couldn't exactly turn back. Going home wasn't an option. There simply wasn't enough fuel. Commander Grau, cool as ice, tried landing the plane not once, not twice, but 5 different times. That was 5 failed attempts in blinding snow and howling winds. Talk about persistence. On the final try, the plane skidded onto the icy runway, but not without some drama. The right landing gear hit a snowdrift and just gave out, causing the plane to spin like a giant 30-ton figure skater. Despite the wild landing, all 80 people on board walked away alive, and by a miracle, there were no major injuries. Can we just pause to appreciate that? I stubbed my toe on a coffee table and I'm down for the count, but these folks survived a plane crash in Antarctica. But the Pegasus didn't do so well. Fast forward more than 50 years, and the Pegasus is still chilling at the crash site like that forgotten tub of ice cream in the rear of your freezer, half buried in snow and ice. The spot is now called Pegasus Field, named after the plane. Though the field was used as a runway for years, it retired in 2014 because it's pretty much melted. Hard to believe, I know. Today, researchers and occasional tourists dig around the aircraft to snap a few pics. It's one of the only roadside attractions in Antarctica. Next time you're in the area, check it out and be sure to tag me. The Forgotten Civilizations. Did you know that nearly 98% of Antarctica is buried under an ice sheet that is up to 3 miles thick? That is so much ice that even if Japan's Mount Fuji, which is a whopping 12,400 feet tall, tried to peek out, it couldn't breach the top. I'm saying the ice is thick enough to completely bury Mount Fuji. Oh, and the weather? Forget your puffy coat. Those goose feathers won't protect you from the sub-zero temperatures. In Antarctica, you need something NASA grade to wear. Temperatures regularly plunge below minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit, with winds that could knock you over at 200 miles per hour. Just another day in paradise, right? Jonathan Young, founding curator of the Joseph Campbell Archives, calls the continent the true last frontier. And he's got a point. Despite being discovered nearly 250 years ago, we still know shockingly little about it. But many scientists agree there is more going on than meets the eye. In July 2018, investigative journalist Linda Moulton Howe interviewed a retired Navy SEAL, known only as Spartan 1. Under a thick cloak of anonymity, he spilled the beans about a mysterious mission that took place in August 2003. According to Spartan 1, his team was sent on a covert operation to Antarctica. Here we go again. Spartan 1's mission was officially reconnaissance. Unofficially, it was to track down something unknown. When they arrived in Antarctica, the team stumbled upon an enormous octagonal structure jutting out of the ice. Picture a giant alien igloo, but way cooler. The team cautiously entered the structure, which was mostly buried under ice. The first thing that stood out? Massive doors, 18 to 30 feet thick. Yet they opened with the effort of a single finger. Once inside, the team was hit with another shocker. The temperature was a cozy 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, while it was minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside. And get this, the whole place glowed with an eerie lime green light. But there was no visible source. The walls were covered in strange hieroglyphics that Spartan 1 couldn't identify. They weren't Egyptian or Mayan. These linguistic symbols on the wall came from someone or something else entirely. Like so many stories involving a cover-up, I can't confirm that what I just told you is the truth. All I can do is tell you the information and let you make up your mind. William Henry, author and investigative mythologist, suggests that under all of the Antarctic ice, there might be ancient biological remains, stone temples, and who knows what else. If true, it could be the biggest revelation in human history. Was Atlantis in Antarctica? It's time for one of the world's juiciest mysteries. There is a chance that scientists have been looking in the wrong spot all of these years for the legendary city of Atlantis. It is not beyond the Pillars of Hercules at the end of the Mediterranean Sea. It might be in Antarctica. Why has the story of Atlantis lasted for so long? The tale likely spread through Arab geographers like an idea plague, traveling from port to port along the Red Sea. The fable was a form of ancient gossip, traded like gold or exotic spices, but with a lot more divine punishment and catastrophic flooding. Plato's works Timaeus and Critias describe Atlantis as a utopia that went off the rails. The sin and arrogance of the Atlanteans angered the gods, leading to their spectacular demise through earthquakes and floods. Most Atlantis hunters these days scour the ocean floor looking for signs of the ancient city, but not the late author and professor Charles Hapgood. He believed the lost city might not be underwater at all. He believed it was hiding in plain sight as the entire continent of Antarctica. Hapgood didn't just think Antarctica was home to Atlantis. He thought the entire frozen piece of land was Atlantis. It was his firm belief that under the ice is a metropolis of such grandeur that when it's finally found, nobody will ever talk about Tutankhamun's tomb again. Okay, cool, but how? Antarctica isn't exactly around the corner from Greece. According to Hapgood, Earth's crust did a sudden shimmy known as crustal displacement, and this tropical paradise got yeeted into the icy southern bowl we know today. Atlantis was transported by the moving crust of the planet to a completely different location. It may sound completely insane, but Albert Einstein himself thought that Hapgood might be onto something. The guy who literally rewrote the rules of the universe gave Hapgood's theory of crustal displacement a thumbs up. That is eerily convincing, but no one knows if it's true. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but modern investigations into plate tectonics have poured some cold water on Hapgood's theory. Antarctica's icy cover has been there for millions of years. What's your take on the controversy? Could Atlantis really be buried under Antarctica's frosty facade, or maybe another different civilization? Let me know your thoughts. Imminent doom in Antarctica. We are in big trouble. Imagine an ice cream cone on a hot day. The hotter it gets, the faster it melts down your hand and gets you all sticky. Well, scientists have found that the same thing is happening in Antarctica. Only the melting Antarctic ice is stirring up explosives. It is bigger than big. We are in huge, scary, intense trouble. Scientists have identified over 100 hidden volcanoes on the brink of erupting, and there is nothing humans can do to stop this disaster. One of Antarctica's most famous fiery giants is Mount Erebus, with its iconic lava lake bubbling like a hot cup of coffee on a Monday morning. While this one gets a lot of attention, there's a whole bunch of other volcanoes lurking beneath the ice just waiting for their moment to shine, or more accurately, their moment to erupt. The hotter the climate gets, the closer the hidden volcanoes are to blowing their tops. Scientists have been stressing the dangers of rising sea levels for years, but this new threat has them in full-blown panic mode. Here's the science behind it. The volcanoes are quietly sitting under heaps of ice, and all that ice is extremely heavy. When the weight of the ice melts away, it's like taking a backpack off a tired hiker. The pressure is relieved and then boom, magma starts to expand. It's the same thing if you open a soda bottle and the bubbles rush out. As the ice melts, volatile gases like CO2 and sulfur that were trapped in the magma start to pop out, like carbonation escaping from the soda bottle. The resulting increased pressure in the magma chamber could be the spark that lights the fuse for an eruption. Dozens of volcanoes erupting at once is bad news, right? The only good thing is that the eruptions won't be like your classic Hollywood volcano, with lava streaming down the sides and ash clouds filling the sky. These volcanoes are subglacial, meaning they are hidden beneath thick layers of ice, out of sight. But don't let that fool you. Even though they are hidden, they can still pack a punch. The heat from these eruptions can melt the ice from below, weakening the Antarctic ice sheet and creating a feedback loop that keeps the volcanoes active. Eventually, the active volcanoes won't be subglacial anymore. Then they'll be spewing ash into the atmosphere, which has a good chance of causing a natural nuclear winter. Bye-bye crops, hello end of the world. Luckily, the process could take hundreds of years to really get going. We probably won't see the Antarctic cataclysm, but future generations will live in a world where Antarctica is a land of fire instead of ice. Death in the ice. The shocking deaths of 56 million people have been found preserved in the ice of Antarctica. History is frozen in its terrifying tracks. The discovery is all thanks to something you're not going to expect: tiny bubbles. Antarctica is a place so cold you'd be lucky to survive without a heated blanket inside your heated sleeping bag. All that ice keeping the continent cold amazingly contains the secrets of the world. Bubbles frozen into layers of ice hold the records of everything from volcanic eruptions to major historical events. Have you ever wondered how scientists can know what the Earth was like hundreds of thousands of years ago? It's not like they have a crystal ball or a time-traveling device. They have to rely on ice cores. Ice cores are frozen columns of history packed with little itty-bitty air bubbles. The bubbles have been trapped for centuries, even millennia. As snow falls in Antarctica, it compresses into ice, locking in everything from volcanic ash to gases like carbon dioxide. This is important because all of those gases are a perfect snapshot of the atmosphere at a specific time. By analyzing the gases in the air pockets, which are in the ice cores, scientists can look at secrets of the past. Sometimes those secrets are more horrifying than anyone is prepared for. Amy King, a research scientist at the British Antarctic Survey, described the air bubbles as fossilized atmospheres. It was Amy King and her research team who recently inspected the ice cores and uncovered one of the most gut-wrenching pieces of human history. I'm talking about the European colonization in the Americas, which saw a staggering 56 million people wiped out. This devastating time in history was recorded in the very air of the planet, then was frozen for us to find. It was so bad that it left a mark in the atmosphere. Let's break it down a little bit. When Europeans first landed in the Americas in the 15th century, they brought more than just shiny swords and fancy hats. They also brought diseases like smallpox and measles, diseases which indigenous people had zero immunity to. On top of that, there was war, genocide, and the brutal impact of colonization. It's estimated that 56 million people perished in just 150 years. The sheer scope of death is unimaginable. As populations dropped in the Americas, large areas of agricultural land were abandoned. And you know what happens when farms get left behind? Nature takes over. In a lot of places, forests that were destroyed by natives grow back, absorbing tons of CO2 in the process. This shift in land use caused a noticeable dip in carbon dioxide levels, and it is all tracked in those ancient ice bubbles I told you about. The atmosphere changed, and scientists can see it today in the ice core data. Now that is a chilling reminder of the past. Amy King's research shows just how impactful human activity can be, even when we don't realize it. How amazing is it that scientists can figure all this stuff out in one small bubble of preserved air in Antarctica? The true discovery of Antarctica. Apparently, we've been lied to. Europeans did not find Antarctica. It was a completely different culture that kind of got shafted out of history. For centuries, we've been taught that the discovery of Antarctica happened in the 19th century by Russian and British explorers. It turns out someone else beat them to the punch by nearly 1,200 years. But who? Which ancient civilization could have reached Antarctica by sea? I'll give you a second to guess. Okay, ready? Hope you guessed the Maori, because it was the Maori. Those amazing Polynesian sailors reached Antarctica long before Western explorers or Russian explorers even knew the world was round. It was a group of curious researchers from the University of Otago in Dunedin, New Zealand, who made this great revelation. They unearthed Maori oral histories, carvings, and literature that paint a picture of an ancient Polynesian explorer named Hui Te Rangiora. Hui Te Rangiora, a Polynesian chief from the island of Rarotonga, was said to have sailed with his crew southward in the 7th century AD. Their mission was to discover new lands, like Columbus himself. The sailors got all the way to Antarctica, 5,000 miles from their home island. The Maori took 70-foot-long canoes and ventured south across the deadly open ocean. That's crazy to think about, isn't it? No one can explain how they knew where they were going without any kind of navigational equipment. But hey, they got there. In the chronicles, the ancient explorers named the new land Teotihuacan, which means frozen ocean that looks like arrowroot. One famous description from Hui Te Rangiora's journey says they found a foggy, misty, dark place not seen by the sun. There is growing evidence that what I just told you is the real history of Antarctica, as opposed to the old history. According to the traditional narrative, Russian explorer Fabian von Bellingshausen is credited with first spotting Antarctica in 1820. The British explorer Edward Bransfield followed, and a year later, American Captain John Davis became the first to set foot on the continent. Sorry guys, you were all 1,200 years late for the party. Right now, Dr. Priscilla Wehe and the University of Otago team are working to correct the historical record and highlight how Maori and Polynesian voyaging traditions have been overlooked for centuries. The Iceberg of Doom. Scientists have identified yet another doomsday glacier in the icy south. It's an iceberg bigger than Los Angeles. A massive chunk of Antarctica just decided to take a little vacation. 600 square miles of ice suddenly slid off the Brunt ice shelf and floated away into the ocean. This happened on January 22nd earlier this year, so pretty recently. The iceberg was born during what's known as spring tide, when the moon and sun align in perfect cosmic harmony to stir things up in the ocean. And trust me, this ice break was a big deal. Scientists have been monitoring a crack in the ice sheet for years, slowly watching it grow, waiting for the inevitable. And now, after nearly a decade of anticipation, it finally happened. Jane Francis, the director of the British Antarctic Survey, wasn't surprised in the slightest. The scientists at Halley Base even moved their research station in 2016 so that they wouldn't be in any immediate danger when the split came. But what caused this whole situation? Surprisingly, Jane said it has nothing to do with climate change. Ice shelves crack naturally, birthing enormous icebergs. In fact, this is the second major iceberg to break off from the Brunt ice shelf in just 2 years. The first, nicknamed A74, was a beast the size of 20 Manhattans. And now we've got this even bigger one floating around that's the size of LA. You probably want to know what this means for rising sea levels. Is another monster iceberg going to hasten New York City sinking like Atlantis? Scientists say probably not. In the grand scheme of things, iceberg calving events like this one are just nature doing its thing, like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Except this toddler is the size of a continent. Antarctica has been playing this game for millions of years. Still, watching an iceberg the size of LA slide into the ocean is like watching the world's biggest ice cube take a stroll. Not sure if melting icebergs filling up the world's oceans is a good thing. Humans in Antarctica 6,000 years ago. Scientists keep trying to tell us that there has never been a civilization in Antarctica. Well, hold on to your hats, because what I'm about to tell you is as shocking as finding a hot dog at a vegan barbecue. Antarctica, the frozen desert at the bottom of the world, the land of penguins, ice, and sometimes no return, apparently had people on it 6,000 years ago. Modern scientists only started to explore it in 1822, but there are maps of the continent that date much earlier. These ancient maps show the continent completely ice-free. These maps that are thousands of years old show Antarctica before the glaciers took over. The ancient cartographers who drew up these maps were apparently navigating the planet at a time when most humans were still figuring out how to invent the wheel. None of this makes sense, so let's investigate the known facts. Experts like William James Viel, a space archaeologist, yes, that is a real job title, are doing some serious detective work to understand Antarctica's history. Through satellite technology, Viel uncovered images of what can only be described as human heads on Antarctica's coastline. The heads seem to point to a lost civilization at a time before the ice. I know what you're thinking. Apparently, these human heads are not just random rocks shaped like faces. The heads are detailed portraits of what appear to be actual people etched into rocks as enormous geoglyphs. But hold on, because that's just the beginning. Some of the carved portraits even show people wearing tricorn hats. Hello, 18th century fashion. But they are carved on rocks that date to thousands of years ago. Who knew the South Pole had such great taste in headwear? There is only one question that needs to be answered. Who carved these weird heads? Let's get back to those maps I was telling you about, because apparently they might hold the answers we seek. Ancient naval charts drawn up by the likes of Philippe Gouache and Laurentius Phineas depict Antarctica without its icy blanket. But how could they know? Philippe and Laurentius were both around in the 16th century, long before it was thought any living human knew Antarctica existed. Were these guys just ahead of their time, or did they have access to secret knowledge? Marinus of Tyre, an ancient Greek geographer, was also a big deal when it came to maps. In 400 BC, he had access to a map showing Antarctica, and guess what? No ice. But that map is now lost to history, and no one has any idea how Marinus got his hands on it in the first place, or what became of it. If the map did once exist, it could be proof that Antarctica only recently became inundated by ice. Recently, as in the last couple of centuries, which is far from what scientists have been telling us. The maps, the carvings, they all hint at advanced seafaring civilizations that could have been navigating the oceans long before Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Some of the carvings have even been recognized as looking like Hindu gods. It's another piece of the puzzle that just doesn't fit.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Genetic Disc, Colombia. This dark black disc was reportedly discovered in Colombia by Professor Jaime Gutierrez Lema. It has carvings on both sides that are believed to represent the evolutionary process from frogs to humans. It is also known as the genetic disc, and the figure's interpretation has led to ancient astronaut theorists and young Earth creationists to think that it is proof of an unknown ancient civilization that used alien technology. The disc is made of lyddite, which is quite hard to carve, and no other similar objects have been found like it. The interpretation on the back is of cells splitting, a sperm, an egg, and perhaps the beginning of life. But how would have ancient people known about cells and genetics? Dated to be over 6,000 years old, there is just one problem. Maybe more problems. There is no record of the disc ever having been discovered and hardly any detail to the story. Jaime Gutierrez Lema was not actually a professor but an industrial engineer in Colombia. Somehow the disc was taken to the Museum of Natural Sciences in Austria and studied by Dr. Vera Hammer. While she was able to determine what it was made of, they have not yet attributed it to any specific culture or time period. As it stands, it is attributed to the Muisca culture from Colombia, but while they make beautiful intricate jewelry and articles from gold, there is nothing like this. The artwork on the disc is very different from theirs, so the mystery remains. What is it, and where did it come from? Istanbul rocket. Information about the artifact known as the Istanbul rocket is somewhat obscure. The small carving is allegedly over 2,000 years old, and it appears to depict an ancient single-seat rocket ship with an astronaut aboard. It was reportedly discovered in 1975 beneath the ancient city of Tushpa, which was the capital of the Urartu Kingdom of ancient Armenia in the 9th century BC. The original Istanbul rocket was crafted from a soft volcanic stone, according to sportscards.com, which sells replicas of the artifact. During the late 20th century, it was supposedly one of the most popular objects on display at the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. The late author Zecharia Sitchin was the leading proponent of the ancient astronaut theory, which is what it sounds like, the belief that prehistoric extraterrestrials existed and visited Earth. Sitchin used the Istanbul rocket as an example of evidence to support this theory, suggesting that a member of an ancient human civilization carved it after witnessing a rocket ship firsthand. Other experts aren't so sure, instead concluding that nobody can say for sure what the artifact represents. Some even believe that the Istanbul rocket is a forgery. A convincing argument is that everyone has actually been looking at it the wrong way. Everyone has looked at it horizontally, so like this, it looks like a rocket. But if you actually turn it vertically, it looks like a person in a uniform with a pointy hat. It is arguably a Hittite warrior with the traditional cone hat, beard, shield, and skirt-like garment that they wore. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. The Wedge of Aiud. The Wedge of Aiud is an out-of-place artifact, or upart, that was discovered in Aiud, Romania in 1974. Construction workers allegedly found the 4 to 5 pound aluminum object alongside 2 mastodon bones below 35 feet of sand while digging for a project. One way or another, perhaps by way of a donor, the artifact made its way to the Museum of History of Transylvania, where it sat in storage for 2 decades. Editors from a Romanian UFO magazine, who gained access to the wedge in 1995, theorized based on the layer of soil that the object was found in that it must be at least 11,000 years old. Since then, those who adhere to the ancient astronaut theory estimate the artifact's possible age at anywhere from thousands to millions of years old. One rationalization for the idea that aliens created the wedge of Aiud is the fact that it seems to predate the emergence of metallic aluminum in 1825. A conspicuously nameless engineer even reportedly claimed that the item is a piece of landing gear from a vertical takeoff and landing spacecraft. Another, equally far-flung theory about the wedge is that a time traveler fleeing from mastodons left it behind before returning to their proper era. Perhaps unfortunately for everyone, the so-called artifact proved to be the tooth of a bucket excavator that was used at the construction site. It just happened to fall in at the wrong time. Whoops! And now for number 7. But first, it's shout-out time! Want to say a big thank you to Isaiah Thomas and Vincent Miranda. Thank you so much for your support. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the latest videos. The Koso artifact. Discovered in the Koso mountain range of eastern California in 1961, the Koso artifact is a small, oblong, stone-like mass with a strange object embedded inside of it. Shortly after it was found, someone cut it in half and noticed that the middle was filled with a white, porcelain-like material. The rock's interior also contains a small magnetic pin. This was confirmed through X-rays, which also show a screw-like mechanism on one end and a metal coating over the white cylinder. In the nearly 60 years since it was discovered, the 2 by 3 inch alleged artifact has been the source of much speculation. One theory holds that the item contains an electrical device left behind by prehistoric aliens. Others suggest that it is evidence of an advanced ancient human civilization that existed here on Earth. A software manager named Pierre Stromberg researched the Koso artifact for hundreds of hours before it ended up on display at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle as part of an exhibit called What is Reality in late 2018. In his book, Impossible Truths, Amazing Evidence of Extraterrestrial Contact, Stromberg wrote, "The existence of the pin in an object that is at least 500,000 years old provides evidence of significant knowledge of metallurgy at the time." A spark plug expert identified the Koso artifact as a 1920s-era champion spark plug that was most likely left behind after being used with mining equipment. It somehow became embedded in something called a concretion, a spherical rock-like formation that forms as sediment builds up around an object. Concretion can create extremely symmetrical and pristine shapes, so people think it's human, and no nature can create such a thing, University of Washington assistant professor Alex Licht told the Seattle Times. As it turns out, there is a perfectly logical explanation for this seemingly out-of-this-world artifact. Teotihuacan. Located in a sub-valley of the Valley of Mexico, roughly 40 miles northeast of modern-day Mexico City, the ancient Mesoamerican city of Teotihuacan, meaning City of the Gods, is a sprawling collection of pyramid temples and other structures dating back roughly 2,000 years. The buildings look alarmingly advanced for their time, and this was indeed the case when it came to more than just Teotihuacan's architecture. At its peak, the pre-Aztec city likely housed around 100,000 residents, easily qualifying it as a metropolis that was far beyond its years, boasting sophisticated agricultural technology and artwork. The most famous structure at Teotihuacan is the Pyramid of the Sun. Constructed around 200 AD, it's one of the largest buildings in Mesoamerica and one of the largest pyramids in the Western Hemisphere, standing at 246 feet high and measuring 738 feet across. Archaeologists theorize that a combination of civilizations built Teotihuacan over the years, including the Maya, Zapotec, and Mixtec. But for some, the explanation that human ingenuity created the great buildings and features at the site simply isn't enough. Instead, they argue some sort of superhuman force must have been at play. Perhaps aliens. What do you think? Are the buildings at Teotihuacan too advanced to have been made with human hands? Or are some people guilty of underestimating the capabilities of ancient Mesoamerican societies? Let me know in the comments below. The London Hammer. While out for a stroll with his wife in London, Texas in 1936, a man named Max Hahn discovered what is now known as the London Hammer, a seemingly man-made tool enveloped in 400-million-year-old rock. Since humans have only been around for an estimated 200,000 years, give or take, Hahn's fascinating find begs the obvious question of how something created by humans ended up being swallowed by exponentially older material. Based on the tool's shape and size, experts believe it was manufactured for the purpose of working with soft metals. It has not rusted since it was discovered, although its wooden handle has started to form into coal. The London Hammer resembles tools that were used in the area during the late 19th century, but because of where it was found, and instead of trying to figure out how it got there, some people theorize that it's much older than it appears. This could be a case of a concretion forming around the hammer, much like with the Koso artifact, making it seem unexplainably ancient. If proven, this theory could debunk any beliefs relating to time travel, advanced ancient civilizations before humans were even known to exist, or prehistoric aliens. Either way, the London hammer is an admittedly fascinating discovery, forcing amateurs and experts alike to ponder both the limits of science and rational thought, as well as the possibility that the world's past is vastly different and perhaps much more advanced than experts currently believe. If you want to see a first-hand look at the artifact, you can see it on display at Carl Bo's Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. Sacsayhuaman. Nestled in the Peruvian Andes outside the old Inca capital of Cusco, Sacsayhuaman is an ancient fortress built from massive interlocking stones that are fitted together with such precision the effect would be difficult to replicate even with modern machine technology. Like a flawless, nearly seamless jigsaw puzzle, the pieces are set so closely to one another the spaces between them are too thin for even a piece of paper to fit into. Perhaps even more impressively, each individual boulder weighs up to 360 tons and traveled from over 20 miles away to reach the site. So how did the Incas transport these enormous stones and assemble the 1,000-year-old structures with nothing but hand tools and manpower? It's the burning question that many experts have spent years trying to definitively answer. Along the way, they've learned that Sacsayhuaman is one of several known sites that exemplify the Incas' shockingly flawless architectural and engineering skills. In recent years, archaeologists found evidence of a rope and lever system that was used for moving the boulders from point A to point B, partially solving the mysteries surrounding the ancient fortress. But the exact methods behind the Inca's stoneworking skills remain unknown, leading some to believe that extraterrestrials had a hand in building the site. Meanwhile, others simply cite Sacsayhuaman as a prime example of how modern society and academia fail to give ancient civilizations due credit for their advanced ways. The face on Mars. In 1976, the Viking 1 orbiter captured images of what appeared to be an eerily human-like face on the surface of Mars. Located in the planet's Cydonia region, the mystifying formation measures 2 miles long. Scientists initially dismissed the face as the product of shadows, similarly to how people enjoy staring up at the clouds and use their imaginations to find images and shapes that most of us know are created by coincidence. But this explanation didn't fly for everyone, and over the years, the face on Mars has garnered more attention than perhaps the scientific community would like, with many adhering to the theory that aliens put it there. To some, it might be easier to believe that extraterrestrials may have reached Mars than to get on board with any theories that they visited the Earth. After all, Mars is another planet, and to most people it probably feels much further away from us than it actually is, making ideas about aliens seem more realistic from a locational standpoint. But the much more likely explanation for the face on Mars circles back to what experts originally thought, that it's no more than an optical illusion. NASA revisited the issue, literally, in 2001, when the Mars Global Surveyor passed by and glanced at the formation. Upon taking a second look, it was pretty darn clear that the first theory about the face was the correct one. The more recent imagery shows that the structure is just a mesa, similar to the formations on Earth that go by the same name, except on Mars. Or perhaps not. Maybe you're convinced that there's more to the story. Ancient alien astronaut. The sarcophagus of the Maya king Kiinich Janab Pakal, also known as Pakal the Great, who died in 683 AD, made headlines in recent years for supposedly bearing an image of the leader taking off in a spaceship. Naturally, this paved the way for wildly imaginative notions about the ancient Mesoamerican civilization coming into contact with extraterrestrials. The theory gained even more popularity in February 2019, when Joe Rogan addressed the image in his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Although Rogan took a skeptical approach, casting doubt on the validity of the notion that someone decorated Pakal the Great's sarcophagus with a picture of a spacecraft, his acknowledgement of the theory gave it more airplay than it arguably deserved. Some people reference the sophistication of advanced ancient societies as evidence that aliens helped fuel their growth and development, and at first consideration, the image may seem to support this idea, but looks can be deceiving. But it would be unfair to blame Rogan for people's decision to take an idea and run with it, especially since he requested opinions from archaeologists on the matter. David Anderson, an archaeologist at Radford University in Virginia, answered Rogan's call, using it as an opportunity to hopefully educate people on the image's true nature. He took to Twitter writing, "Speaking as a mainstream archaeologist, it depicts Pakal falling into the underworld at the moment of his death. Science magazine further reported that what appears to be rocket flames beneath Pakal is actually a representation of the underworld, and that the so-called spaceship is a common feature of Maya art called a world tree. Sometimes all you need to do to get to the bottom of a quandary is to ask the pros to weigh in. And regardless, it's still a cool story, and the object already has its own mythology. There's no need to make up a new one from scratch all the time. Klerksdorp spheres. Over the years, these strange round metal balls have been discovered in mines in South Africa that are considered to be too perfect to have been created naturally. These spheres have been found in the hundreds, with some weighing more than others and some with grooves around the middle. They vary in shape a little and range from 0.5 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Estimated to be around 3 billion years old, many people believe these to be quite the mystery, since they look man-made. But of course, no intelligent life existed on this planet at the time they were formed. They are found in pyrophyllite, which is a very soft mineral, but the spheres themselves are extremely hard and supposedly can't even be scratched. Of course, they are a hot topic since people think they are proof of ancient aliens. Rumors of the origin of the sphere don't help things. In theory, a man brought one of the spheres to NASA. A NASA scientist reportedly said that they do not have the technology to create anything as finely balanced as this sphere, so it must have been made in zero gravity. Tests performed at the California Space Institute discovered that the stone is balanced to within 100,000th of an inch from absolute perfection. But documentation of this story is impossible to find, and there is no perfect balance to these spheres, and they are not harder than steel. If you prefer a more natural explanation, geologists think they have found the answer. They are the result of a natural process. Geologists agree that the spheres found in deposits near Ottosdal, South Africa, first formed in volcanic sediments as hard masses in soft deposits that began to grow and harden over millions and billions of years. The grooves are formed as they grow due to the different pressures of the layers of rock around it. They are now known as Precambrian concretions. Regardless, I still think they're interesting. Thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.